In a world that rewards constant communication, compulsive sharing, and performative transparency, we've forgotten one of the most powerful tools in human interaction: strategic silence. While everyone else announces their goals, reveals their thoughts, and explains their moves, the truly effective operator knows when to shut up and uses that silence as a weapon. Niccolò Machiavelli, the 16th century Florentine philosopher and political theorist, understood this better than most. Though known for his blunt and direct advice in The Prince, some of his most potent insights concern what should remain unsaid. "The vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances," he wrote, recognizing that speech creates appearances while silence preserves reality. In an age of oversharing, those who master silence don't just protect their position, they gain a kind of power communicators can't. Machiavelli lived in a time when a single misplaced phrase could lead to exile or execution. While the stakes may be lower today, the consequences of careless speech still matter. Unnecessary words bind you to commitments. They expose how you think, allowing others to predict or counter your actions. The first method of estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him, Machiavelli wrote. In the same way, your speech reveals your own strategic limits. Speech can also erode authority. "It is far safer to be feared than loved," he declared. Fear demands mystery, but when you explain every decision, justify every move, and react to every criticism, you become predictable. And the predictable cannot command respect. We see this play out today. The colleague who dominates every meeting gradually loses credibility. The friend who shares every detail of their life becomes boring, not relatable. The negotiator who nervously fills silences with compromises surrenders leverage. The leader who constantly answers every critic diminishes their own stature. Machiavelli would have seen our modern culture of overcommunication not as authenticity, but as undisciplined self-sabotage. Strategic silence isn't simple quiet. It is a deliberate tactic. It takes three powerful forms: information-gathering silence, authority-building silence, and ambiguity-preserving silence. Understanding these is key to using silence not passively, but as an active force of influence. The first type, information-gathering silence, involves waiting silently while others speak. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. The fool reveals his hand too early. The wise remains silent, observing. This yields asymmetric advantage. Others expose their intentions while you reveal nothing. In negotiations, speaking first often results in losses. In relationships, the listener gains insight. In competition, those who hide their strategies are harder to counter. Observing quietly lets the loud reveal far more than they should. The second form of strategic silence is authority-building silence. Machiavelli wrote, "A prince must imitate the fox and the lion. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. The fox's cunning lies in knowing when speaking erodes power instead of enhancing it. Selective speech signals strength. The confident speak less but with purpose. The insecure over-explain. The anxious respond to every challenge. Consider the difference between a junior executive who overtalks and a CEO who speaks only when needed. The fewer words you use, the more impact they have." The third type is ambiguity-preserving silence. Since it is difficult to satisfy everyone, maintaining interpretive flexibility is often an advantage. "It is safer to be feared than loved" applies here too. When you remain vague, people fill the silence with their own hopes or fears. Politicians do it frequently. A vague promise appeals to opposing sides in different ways. Ambiguity preserves optionality and avoids dangerous commitment. Machiavelli believed that effective leaders maintain flexibility by refusing to disclose too much too soon. Transparency removes all negotiation power. Silence keeps doors open. Strategic silence is not just tactical, it's psychological. It creates projection. People tend to fill silent spaces with their own assumptions, often revealing more about themselves than about you. Men are so simple and so yielding to immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims, Machiavelli observed. Silence uses this tendency without manipulation. It creates discomfort people rush to escape, often saying more than they mean to. Interrogators know this. So do persuasive speakers and clever negotiators. Silence exposes others without exposing you. Silence also changes dynamics. The person who rushes to speak first or says the most unconsciously seeks approval. But the one who speaks last, or not at all, commands judgment. This flips the power dynamic. In meetings, the quiet person commands attention when they do speak. In job interviews, candidates who ask sharp questions come off smarter than those who try to impress. In relationships or arguments, the calm listener disarms instead of escalates. Machiavelli's advice, "It is better to be feared than loved," has modern application. People respect who they don't fully understand. Lastly, silence maintains mystique. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, because everyone can see, few can feel. People fear what they can't fully figure out. The leader who always justifies their thinking becomes relatable, and relatability erodes authority. The leader who reveals conclusions but not the inner process behind them keeps others guessing. That mystery feeds perception. You appear more thoughtful, more decisive, more capable, often simply because you speak less. So why does modern culture value transparency so highly? We are told to be authentic, to communicate openly, to speak your truth. But this constant exposure works against power. The promise given was a necessity of the past, Machiavelli wrote. The word broken, a necessity of the present. Today's obsession with openness locks you into positions, declarations, sentiments you may no longer believe or can't act on. It's not a question of honesty versus dishonesty. Machiavelli wasn't advocating lies. He was advocating control. Strategic silence is not withholding truth. It's revealing only what serves your purpose. The transparency trap shows up everywhere. Oversharing drafts at work before they're ready. Disclosing personal plans that aren't settled. Revealing negotiation goals before knowing the other side's limits. In relationships, it takes the form of spilling emotional baggage too soon, or confessing things that need no confession. The culture may promote these as real, but Machiavelli would view them as strategic blunders. Disclosure without gain is vulnerability. Consistent transparency makes you predictable and manipulable. So how does one apply Machiavellian silence today? First, practice information asymmetry. Let others speak first. Ask more questions. Reveal only once you understand the entire landscape. In negotiation, this lets you shape your position to maximize leverage. In politics or leadership, it allows you to strike surgically rather than react impulsively. Power begins in information, but information flows best to the quiet observer. Second, lean into strategic ambiguity. You don't owe the world constant clarity. Say what's necessary, especially when describing vision or direction. But don't needlessly lock yourself into specifics that may change. As Machiavelli observed, a prince should be very slow to believe and to act, nor should he show fear. That slowness preserves your freedom to adapt. Avoid finality unless it benefits you to commit. This works in leadership, in conversation, in strategy, in life. Third, learn to sit with silence. Most people panic in uncomfortable gaps and rush to fill them with justifications, objections, or concessions. Practice resisting the urge. In meetings, offer your answer and say no more. Let others react first. In conflict, hear everything before you speak. In leadership, let your decisions stand without commentary. That restraint will reinforce your authority far more than over-explaining ever could. This is the difference between talking to be heard and speaking to be felt. Machiavelli's strategic silence isn't verbal starvation. It's the art of holding back until the moment reveals itself. He wrote, "The vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances, and the world is made up largely of the vulgar. In a world where everyone shares everything, mystery becomes magnetic. The less you reveal, the more others believe you know. Their imaginations fill in the gaps. Their insecurities project meaning onto your stillness. Your silence becomes the screen onto which others cast themselves. That is control, not through domination or deception, but through discipline. Perhaps the ultimate irony of strategic silence is that its greatest practitioners are rarely recognized. We almost always notice the loud ones, the performers, the transparently successful. But the real operators win in shadows. They build alliances while others burn bridges performing for applause. They move pieces quietly. They execute before others even suspect they were competitors. They win, and nobody knows how. Maybe this explains why Machiavelli himself remains misunderstood. His name became shorthand for ruthlessness, but his real gift was understanding human psychology. He saw clearly that power doesn't always require force or deception. Sometimes it requires quiet restraint. Influence thrives not just on what you say, but often on what you don't. So now I have just one question for you. Are you ready to stop talking and start winning? If you made it this far, I want to know who's listening between the lines. Drop the phrase "silence wins wars" in the comments. Let's separate the observers from the operators. If this message shifted how you look at power, if it helped you see that real leaders don't shout, they watch, then like and subscribe because we're just getting started. And remember, you don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to know when not to speak.